feel like I always go through these moments where I'm like, ugh, like, do I even want to coach anymore? It just feels so blurry.
So there's just different barriers for therapy, as well as coaching is also a lot of times problematic.
All I can say is I'm really hoping there's some more regulations coming because it's scary out there right now.
Many of us are familiar with the concept of therapy.
Psychotherapy works with the unconscious, it works with the underlying patterns to a person.
Therapy is more so processing the past, processing things you've gone through, processing and figuring out what to do with kind of the baggage, I guess, that we come with. We all come with baggage.
Therapy focuses on the inner world. There's an actual disorder there, some type of psychopathology that you identify that's causing dysfunctioning, and it warrants a presence of symptoms that are clinically significant enough to warrant a certain medical diagnosis.
Now, there's a lot of content on the internet that tries to clearly explain the difference between coaches and therapists. In fact, a quick little Google search yields hundreds of responses exploring this exact concept.
Those are two very different modalities. One is medical and one is about achieving a goal.
There's a little bit of overlap, but they're two different, disciplines.
And I know many people in my comments section think coaching is a scam altogether. Or to the contrary, many see therapy as harmful or ineffective. And listen, I believe we're all entitled to our opinions one way or the other. I mean, I built this entire channel on the premise of sharing my opinion. So whether you believe in coaching or you believe in therapy or you believe in some kind of mixture of the two, I'm not here to convince you one way or the other.
Fundamentally, just pointing every single person to therapy and saying that coaches can't be helpful or anyone else. I think if you find something helpful as a person, continue pursuing that, and you should do what's best for yourself.
The point of this video is not to say that one is good and one is bad. The purpose of this video instead is to provide insights from both coaches and therapists to hopefully help you understand the differences between coaching and therapy. We can talk about some of the deficiencies we're seeing in both spaces, and we can discuss how to define clearer boundaries for those who do decide to go the coaching route. Ultimately, I think my goal here is to really just start the conversation about changes that we need to see across both industries.
I think it can get a little misconstrued that coaching is unethical and therapy is not, and that's not necessarily the case.
These lines are blurred all the time.
As of 2024, the International Coaching Federation estimates the value of the coaching industry at over $4.5 billion US. Life coaching is an unregulated industry with basically zero barrier to entry, and this non-existent barrier to entry is something that I have discussed in length here on this channel.
With life coaching, it's more the wild, wild west because there's nobody there to stop you from saying, okay, I read a paragraph and the body keeps a score and now I'm an expert on body work.
And this is not mentioned as a means of saying that because coaching is unregulated, all of it is terrible, so much as it is sort of a word of caution for those who do decide to pursue coaching or hiring a coach, to be able to practice discernment in doing so. It seems to be pretty universally agreed upon that coaching is a profession focusing on helping people to achieve their personal and professional goals.
In coaching, we're not solving problems. We're holding space and asking questions.
Coaching is really a method of letting people come up with their own answers and talking them through the process.
I think coaching in its truest form is asking very powerful questions and helping the client arrive at their own answers.
And through the discussions I had for this video, it seems pretty evident that unlike therapy, which delves a lot into the past, into traumas, and into resolving issues that someone is experiencing, coaching in its true form should really be future-oriented.
Life coaching, done correctly, is supposed to help people with something that they're working on to build for their future.
Work with a coach that you have a specific goal that you need to be held accountable to actually achieving.
Coaching focuses more on present and future focus things specific towards a very specific and usually niched goal.
Now, this is where things got particularly interesting. In the production for this video, I surveyed probably about 10 different coaches and therapists about their general thoughts on the industry, places that they think boundaries are being blurred by maybe their peers or other people they've observed. as well as what they are actively doing as practitioners in the space to ensure the safety and the success of their clients. Now, based on these conversations, it became pretty evident to me that the individuals that I spoke with for this particular video seem to be operating in what I would consider to be the ethical boundaries of coaching. Now, I say that lightly, given that I'm just a talking head on the internet and this is just my opinion, but I do think that there are some very obvious things, which I've talked about in length here on this channel, about what would be considered ethical behavior and what might be considered not so ethical behavior. And if you want me to clarify, you can let me know in the comments. In summary, though, based on the conversations I had for this video, the general conclusion was that the role of a coach was to act as a tool or a source of motivation to get a client from point A to point B without ever actually telling the client exactly what they should be doing.
When someone comes to me with a question of what should I do, the answer is really kind of turned back to them to let them think and reflect on their own path and making their own decisions and choices.
The purpose of coaching is not to heal from past trauma. We might touch on like limitations or limiting beliefs that we acquired from when we were younger, but the purpose and the focus is always to come back to the present and like, what do you want to do about that now? And then how does that relate to where you're headed in the future?
Okay, editing, Danielle here. I wanted to interject because as a commentary creator who has been focusing pretty much entirely on the coaching industry for almost 2 years now, as I was going through these conversations, there was a theme that was really becoming evident to me, and it was triggering a lot of memories regarding content that I've made previously. So there was a particular video that I did, which I will link right here in this video, that covers the concept of shadow work coaching, which if you're not familiar, I highly recommend you go and watch that video. But if you haven't yet, essentially to summarize, there is a particular subsect of coaching in which people essentially self-qualify their ability to help people work through their trauma.
That's what shadow work is. And I'm listening to people talk about shadow work, and I see people trying to do shadow work on their own, and I'm like, that's not what that is.
And I think that most coaches, whether ICF certified or not, anyone who's operating within some sort of ethical boundary would recognize this type of coaching as highly problematic and definitely out of scope.
There is no coaching program that ethically should be allowed to give any credentials in trauma therapy, because that is strictly a mental health presenting issue to address.
At the end of the day, I think it clearly needs to be understood that trauma therapy is a skill that is crafted over many years of education and understanding in order to be able to provide advice and tools to the client, scientifically backed advice and tools, that is, so that that individual is capable of overcoming that trauma, working through it in order to be able to then set and work towards goals.
Psychotherapy is about the relationship they have with themselves. Mainly what I do as a psychotherapist is I look at the person's entire lifespan. And so I'll look at adverse childhood experiences. And based off of these childhood experiences, I'll identify certain conclusions people made about themselves.
Therapy will traditionally focus more on healing, focuses a lot on the past.
And so in saying that, it should also be understood that an effective and ethical coaching relationship should be focused less on healing and focus more on guiding the client to where they want to get to based on their own conclusions and their own desires.
So in very simple terms, coaching, per the International Coaching Federation as well, which is the largest governing body of coaching, it's defined as, future oriented, definitely being in the present moment as well, but it's designed to help you in the future.
So what became more interesting to me as I continued to conduct these interviews was the blurring of boundaries when it came to coaching. Because again, it became pretty clear to me that most of the individuals I spoke to for this video are, in my opinion, doing safe, valuable, and productive work, whether they're operating as a coach or they're operating as a therapist.
When I look at my testimonials from my clients, when I look at the work, when we truly apply peer coaching, it's so transformational in a way that like telling somebody how to do something based on your experience just does not even compare.
But the fact of the matter is, we have seen countless examples on this channel of people who are not doing that.
Lines get blurred, and especially in certain practices of coaching, and whether or not that's actually coaching or not can be a whole separate thing. If you're talking about spiritual manifestation and all these other things, and then you're also talking about healing wounds and inner work. Like, is that actually coaching? I don't know.
Whether that was in fact coaches cosplaying as therapists.
There's a lot that I've seen. Yes, I have seen life coaches marketing themselves as therapists.
Or the differences between coaching and consulting becoming really unclear.
I think the boundary I see more of in my industry is actually more so people consulting rather than coaching. And that is not coaching at all either.
And really, I just started to get this general sense that while it was great that the people I was speaking with knew what they were doing and understood the boundaries of coaching, that wasn't really what I had seen or what many of the people I spoke with had seen as well.
I see people all the time that are like, come here, I will help you with your trauma. Do this and I will help you with the trauma. And they can often make things a lot worse. And it just makes me cringe every time I see it. Like, I'm like, no, don't do this. This is not where you belong.
Whoever would like to create their own coaching program and coaching school kind of makes it up, and makes a unique program themselves.
And so I think based on the conversations I had for this video, as well as the 30 plus interviews that I've conducted from people who have been scammed, for lack of a better term, by some of these coaches, it's pretty obvious to me that a lot of harm can be caused when we see people operating outside of their scope.
Fake it till you make it doesn't work because people can see right through that, and you're going to somehow give advice that's way off course and it's going to hurt the person's life. And that's not proper.
And again, this isn't to say that this only happens in coaching. I'm sure the same could be said for therapy. Having regulations and governance and some sort of qualifying system doesn't suddenly mean that everyone who's operating under that system is an ethical person and is doing what they're supposed to be doing. Credentials don't necessarily mean that a therapist is going to act within their scope.
The thought that anyone with a clinical degree or a license is better than, more qualified in certain capacities, or should be the only one helping people through life struggles is also, in my opinion, not correct.
And so I think the question then becomes, as the practitioner in general, whether you're a coach or whether you're a therapist, what can you do to ensure that you're operating within scope? What can you do to ensure that the client is actually getting the thing that they paid for? What can you do to make sure that you're not making promises that you ultimately can't deliver on?
The very beginning, even before a client books their session with me, I have a whole disclaimer that says, like, look, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. This is not my scope of practice. And I explain to them what my scope of practice is, what a life coach is, and how a life coach can support them.
You have to make sure you set those boundaries and stay strong with them.
I'm in the workplace well-being and burnout space, so that can get definitely like a little overlap there. So if I hear someone saying like, when I go to sit down at work, I'm not really engaged or not motivated, versus someone saying like, I dread going to work so much that I can't get out of bed in the morning. Those are two very different things. And so the first is a consult. And if I hear kind of that language, I may not offer them coaching and point them to a resource for therapy instead.
Something that coaches live by is that we're always reflecting. We're always like fine-tuning our skills. And so we do that for reasons like this, right? When we notice and we're aware that in a conversation with a client, we're spending the majority of the time talking about the past and we just can't seem to move beyond the past, or just something really big that we're not able to move beyond. And I would highly recommend seeing a therapist to sort through that, maybe first or in tandem with coaching.
And so maybe that's it. Maybe that's the opportunity. Perhaps this isn't an either or situation where all coaches think that therapy is bad and all therapists believe that coaching is bad. Instead, maybe there's an opportunity here to meld these two together with the client's best interest in mind and each practitioner operating within their own scope of practice.
A coach, in addition to a clinician, is really helpful for implementation and accountability.
There's so much that we can uncover in a therapeutic setting that can actually really benefit us in coaching as well.
And I don't require it, but it's definitely like a green flag for me. And it's a red flag if someone's never been in therapy. Like, the first appointment is usually like, have you considered therapy?
A coach would be able to help you leverage what you're uncovering in therapy and picturing kind of like leaping into the future with all of that you're uncovering there.
It seems that the general consensus was that a melding of the two services could offer a holistic support system, which would support the emotional healing as well as the goal achievement, provided, again, that the practitioners were operating within their own scope of boundaries. The therapist can provide the tools for emotional regulation and mental health, while the coach offers strategies for productivity and personal growth. The therapist will help you understand the why behind your behaviors, and the life coach will help you to figure out how you're going to move forward when you know those things. So in theory, I think this all sounds fine and good, but if it's not what we're seeing in practice, where do we go from here? How do we move forward?
I do think that there are probably genuine people out there that get into life coaching because they want to add some additional skills to their, way of working. And maybe they already work with people in a corporate environment, or maybe there are some life coaches out there that do genuinely have the skills to be able to support somebody. But I think the industry itself, it's questionable how much it really enables those individuals that are genuine and do have the natural skill and ability to actually harness and grow in that way, just because of the lack of screening, the fact that it's unregulated, that you can just sort of get onto it if you can afford it.
Many coaches could use the argument that therapy is a regulated industry and we still see bad things happening there. So is regulating the coaching industry really the answer?
Now I know a lot of people are like, don't regulate, it's not empowering, like I feel so free being able to coach. And while yes, I think that's a positive side to it, I think that there are too many people out there who don't know what they're doing and who are coaching.
All this to say, I'm leaving this video feeling discouraged, mostly because I didn't actually come up with the answers I was looking for. This video actually took a complete turn away from its original intention. And I spent a long time, literally months, working on this storyline. And as I was piecing it together, I think I was just hoping that at some point, some like magical epiphany would just fall into my lap and make it clear to me what the answer to these questions is. Like, should we all just boycott coaching and go to therapy? If you had asked me this question in 2022, I probably would have told you yes. But now that I've been making this content for so long, I feel like the answer is so much more nuanced. And as one of the interviewees mentioned in the beginning of this video, I think that as an individual, it's so important to just find the tools that work for you versus seeking out someone just because of the particular title that they hold. That being said, I do think there is still a lot of work that needs to be done in helping both coaches and clients understand the definition of what coaching actually is. And mostly just clarifying how it's not therapy, it's not consulting, and it's definitely not traditional mentorship. And so my hope is that with this video, I was maybe able to shed at least a little bit of light onto that aspect of the conversation. I don't know. All that to say, does the coaching industry need more regulation? I think yes. What would that regulation look like? I don't really know. And even after speaking to all of the people that I interviewed for this particular video, I don't think they have the answer either. Perhaps this needs to be a series. Maybe I need more input from you watching this video. What do you think? Please help me. For today, I think I'm going to leave it at that. Everyone who is featured in this video will be linked in the description if you're interested in checking them out. Shout out to my channel members. I appreciate you all so, so much. If you are new here and you're a coach, I would recommend you watch this video here to find out whether or not you're actually a scammer. Okay, take care, comb your hair, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!